have a unique ability to tell what animal a man resembles the second I meet him, especially if I'm attracted to him. I don't know why this is, but I've confirmed with people that my comparisons are fairly accurate. Frank was different because he didn't look like an animal per se, unless we're including fictional ones. He looked like a hot, brooding blonde version of Randall from Monsters, Inc. And yes, I know this sounds wildly unappealing, but at the time I could get on board. We met through Coffee Meets Bagel, a phone dating app for people who want someone who's not going to message them something rude, but is also not their soulmate. He had made me laugh a few times and had only messaged one thing that irked me because it was suspect. He was mildly pushy about getting my number, saying that the app was inconvenient. For those who haven't used this app, it is as inconvenient as opening the app and then clicking on a message. But I figured he was just one of those guys who really valued efficient technology, so I let it go. Our first date went fairly well. We went to a self-serve beer place in Pacific Beach where I like to take dates to show them that I know fun places in San Diego. Our conversation was pretty good. He had a cool job as a cameraman for NBC. This was a major step up for my last boyfriend, who stayed home playing video games all day while he was finding himself, and that was not his biggest fault. Frank and I both liked hiking and reading, but in retrospect, everyone in today's dating app landscape likes hiking and reading. He asked to kiss me as we said goodbye, and the kiss turned into a makeout, which turned into an in-the-car makeout. After we got tired of doing that and it was way past both of our bedtimes, we agreed to see each other again. Having never had a casual sexual relationship before, I wanted to experience it, and he perfectly fit the bill. He was just funny enough to keep me interested and good enough at kissing to imply that he was good at other things too. So the next day, I did something bold, for me at least. I asked if he was free that night for Netflix, sex, and pizza. It was Thursday, and I was going to Los Angeles for my birthday that weekend. My availability was limited, and I really wanted sex and pizza, so that night seemed opportune. He was free and offered up his place for our escapades. I arrived later that evening, feeling hopeful and nervous. He greeted me at the door with a very cute German Shepherd, and I took the dog as a good sign because guys with big dopey dogs are really up my alley. We went to the kitchen where he pulled out a frozen microwave pepperoni pizza. I unfortunately could not eat the pizza because I keep kosher, but I had already had a small dinner and was not going to let this negatively tint the evening. After waiting for the pizza to bake and talking about second date topics like, "This is a nice house," and "What did you do at work today?" we were finally sitting on the bed watching a horror movie. I was staring ahead, waiting for him to finish his sriracha-covered slices. He finished, and he smelled like spicy DiGiorno. But I'd been waiting for this moment for upwards of an hour because pizza takes a surprisingly long time to bake. The sex was terrible. This man was misinformed on the anatomical structure of Down Under. Like, if I were to compare the sex to a map of the San Diego area, if I had wanted him to get to Oceanside, he would be lost in Chula Vista. But what made it worse was the look on his face after the fact as he took the condom off. I could see that there was nothing in it. Wordlessly, he rushed to the bathroom where I could hear the sink running as he ran water through the condom. He returned solemnly. Awkwardly, his words spilling out quickly. The condom broke. By now I already knew this, but the words really hit. I began taking deep breaths and said, "It's okay, I'm on the pill and we'll just get plan B." He sat down next to me and we both stared ahead at the horror movie. He then nudged me and told me I was missing the horror movie. I ignored him and continued the deep breathing. He asked if I wanted him to drive to the pharmacy to pick up the emergency contraception. It was a modern expression of chivalry and made me feel a little better about the whole thing. As he put his shoes on and I continued to try and stop thinking about how much abortions cost, His face became pouty, and he said something that surprised me. "This is not how I wanted the night to go." I looked up in surprise. Me neither. His mini temper tantrum of a comment shifted the mood. It seemed to be about his fulfilling an obligation so that he could get back to the night he imagined. We got in the car, where I recommended a CVS a couple miles away, which had a 24-hour pharmacy. "Rite Aid is closer." "Okay, Rite Aid will do." We made it to Rite Aid, where we promptly discovered that the pharmacy was closed. Despite my insistence that Plan B was not an over-the-counter drug, Frank insisted on pacing the aisles of Rite Aid in a Randall-esque manner while I waited for him to finish. He stared intently at the contents of each aisle, slithering through until he was satisfied that, in fact, this was not an over-the-counter product. Once he was done, we made our way to CVS. I managed to hijack his aux cord, and we sang along to American Pie, a good song to break up awkwardness. We were well on our way to fixing his evening. As we walked into CVS, he headed in a different direction than the pharmacy counter and told me he'd meet me after. It made the whole thing feel mildly shameful. I picked up the pill at the counter for a whopping $54 and found him in the medical disinfectant aisle, intently examining a bottle of hydrogen peroxide. He glanced up. "How much was it?" When I told him, he shrugged. "Well, cheaper than a baby, I guess. I'll split it." "You don't need to." I don't know why I told him he didn't need to. Maybe I didn't want him to be more inconvenienced than he already felt. Deep down, I wanted him to insist. Instead, we headed to the food section, where he grabbed an iced tea and I grabbed a pack of artificial Sour Patch gummies. He took them from me and insisted on paying for them. The blood money gummies did not make up for the $54 chunk now missing from my bank account. An amount that could easily finance a grocery run, a tank of gas, or the surprise Groupon activity I'd wanted to get my sister for when I visited her at college. When I got in the car, I felt like a relieved, deflated balloon. Like if you took a happy-face balloon and popped it. We returned to his home, and I asked him for scissors to open the Plan B container. He said to check his toolbox because he didn't feel like grabbing scissors from the kitchen. So I sat there, stabbing the Plan B package with a screwdriver for a couple minutes before he realized he had a knife handy and cut the package open. Once I had taken the pill, he began playing a current Netflix show regarding two teenagers, one of whom is a psychopath who wants to murder his girlfriend. It was a strange choice considering our circumstances. I was used to defaulting to The Office. We began making out again to diffuse the awkward silence. To the sound of a psychopathic teenager talking about killing animals in the background, he asked me for a blowjob. It felt like he expected a reward for the pharmacy field trip. I turned him down, refusing to bestow upon him his gold star, and he asked why. Because we've had a tumultuous evening and I don't feel like it. I felt too vulnerable and empty in that moment to continue to cater to him, even though I'd stifled every frustration and fear for the past couple of hours in order to save the evening. The evening still didn't feel saved, and I didn't owe him anything. Eventually, he laid down, his back turned toward the television, while I laid on the other side of the bed. We did not touch, and I wondered what all the hype around casual sex was about and how any of this was worth it. The morning involved a brief, unceremonious goodbye, but I felt a yearning for spooning, for a small indication that he was sad to see me go. While I was at work that day, we texted briefly about seeing each other again. I know that sounds crazy, but to me it still felt unresolved. Like maybe if the Plan B thing hadn't had happened, we would have had a normal date, and that chance was still out there. But meanwhile, my head pounded from the hormones, and the nausea was too much for me to justifiably stay at work. I resented him for not asking how I was doing, but I didn't even know if he was supposed to ask. The next day, we briefly texted about hiking. He randomly mentioned that he'd seen marmots on hikes before and texted me a picture of one he had seen in Montana. That's what a marmot looks like. At the moment, I realized that the last thing I wanted to do was text a man about a woodland creature while foreign hormones ran rampant in my body and his cum was still inside me. Later that day, I ended it, blaming a lack of readiness for a casual relationship at the time. I was not honest because I was tired. But I don't think I'm not ready for a casual relationship. I think that before that night, I wasn't ready to demand decency. Split the cost, stand at the counter, and make sure the other person is okay. These are things I should have demanded and expected and addressed with him instead of playing American Pie and agreeing that yes, plan B is indeed cheaper than a baby, and my wallet can handle it. Whether it's casual sex or not, I'm not going to do everything in my power to keep the situation comfortable for the other person. I tried that, and it was still cartoonishly uncomfortable. I literally had to endure talking about marmots. So if this happens again, I'm going to ask for more, because I think every person deserves more than a drive to the pharmacy, a pack of shitty gummies, and a story out of it. Thank you.